Welcome to the Co-Creative Sessions, your access point for knowledge and expertise from artists, creatives, changemakers, designers, entrepreneurs, and community enthusiasts in the South Coast and beyond.
It's just these little fleeting moments, which with photography, that's what we do. We stop time.
Welcoming the viewer into what we do is just so important.
How can you look at the different facets of your creative work?
And now, the Co-Creative Sessions. Thank you for joining us for the latest entry in the Co-Creative Sessions. I'm Scott Bishop. I'll be moderating tonight's session. Mercy Bell is a Nashville-based folk songwriter. She has independently released 3 albums, All Good Cowboys, Mercy Bell, and Golden Child. She's been featured on NPR and Paste Magazine, American Songwriter, Rolling Stone Country, the Nashville Scene, and Austin Chronicle. She's been an official showcase artist at Americanafest, South by Southwest, Nashville Pride, and Mission Creek Music Festival. She is currently co-writing a rock opera about the underground gay sexual revolution in 1950s and 60s Chicago called Leather Daddies, with the writer and creator Scott Bradley. It's based on the book Leatherman by Tracy Baim and Owen Keenan, and it's in development at About Face Theater in Chicago. Mercy is queer and Filipino American. She grew up in San Diego, California, and New Bedford, Massachusetts. She studied history at UMass Dartmouth. After college, she moved to New York City to pursue music and pursue herself. In 2012, after a jaunt in Arkansas, she made it to Nashville, where she currently lives with her 3 spectacular cats, Gonzo, Toast, and Wiley. And now, here's Mercy.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Is this working? All right. My name is Mercy Bell, and Scott did a really lovely introduction. I'm originally from New Bedford, and I went to UMass Dartmouth, so I'm always happy to do South Coast-centric workshops and performances and stuff, even though I'm here in Nashville, rainy Nashville, Tennessee. So this song camp right now is based on my experiences writing songs in the folk, Americana, Nashville, what they call Nashville style of songwriting, which can mean country. It can also mean Americana and folk, kind of the world of John Prine and outlaw country, and also pop music because I love pop music. So I just want to make the disclaimer that there are many genres of songwriting out there that includes from hip hop to musical theater to metal, and I don't really cover all those genres at all. I'm not an expert. So I would always encourage you to study all the different forms of songwriting that you enjoy and like to listen to. And this is just a reminder, this is just a sliver. It's from the world that I have experience in. So just throwing that out there. And I just want to say also, any good creative writing tips work for songwriting. And that is a big thing that I think people that they kind of undervalue. It's that if you've ever taken a creative writing class or a memoir writing class or anything, that can help you write a good song. And I think good songwriting can help you be a better writer. So I'm a big proponent of playing around, brainstorming, experimenting in different forms of art to inform, sometimes for me, a painting or photography can inform my songwriting, or poetry and watching people dance can inform my songwriting. Art inspires art. So I would, if you're joining this workshop and you have no intention of writing a song, I think it's very helpful to inform your other parts of creativity. So I believe that a catchy song has really unparalleled power. It lives rent-free in people's heads. Even songs that you think are so annoying that you hear once and you're just so annoyed you don't think it's good, but it's stuck in your head. That's powerful. An earworm is an earworm. And we've all had that moment of being like, I don't know why I'm waking up with this freaking jingle that I hate for a company I'm never going to buy, but it's still stuck in your head. That is power. And I think that if you can use the power of a catchy melody or a catchy hook and you add some powerful, truthful lyrics to it, you've created a really beautiful, potent piece of art. And so I can't say that I have it down pat, but I strive for it every single day when I write songs, to combine a hook with some truth. And I'm not going to be going over my own music in this. I'm going to try to use popular songs that I think everybody has a good chance of knowing. And if you don't, I'm going to send out a list of the songs I mentioned in this, and I'm going to I can send that out for you later. Another thing is I'm going to be doing everything vocally today because I think different people have different expertise on different instruments, and I think every different instrument provides its own flavor to songwriting. But I do think that we all have a voice. I think everybody should sing, and that everybody should sing, and everybody can sing. And get rid of this idea of being a good singer or not. Your voice is a instrument that we all have. So I believe that great songs come from a heritage of the call and response from our ancestors, and we've all come from worlds of villages and tribes, war chants, prayer chants, work songs, sea shanties, folk songs. Every culture has always used songs to bond, to escape, to meditate, to work. It doesn't matter. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you have a good voice, you have a voice, and I think you should use it to help you write your songs. And another thing, I worked at Sony ATV for a long time, and they process royalties. They process like the money that comes from the most famous songs of all time, and you'd be surprised at like how much money karaoke makes. It's because people want to sing, and they don't really care if they don't sound good or not. So you want to write a song that people want to sing at karaoke. That's what I say. And you want to write a Christmas song because Christmas songs make a lot of money. That's what I learned working at Sony ATV. So I think that a good song transcends genres, and it gives singers and other artists material to work with. So for my first example, I present to you I Will Always Love You by Dolly Parton and covered masterfully by Whitney Houston. This is a song that is sung by two completely different artists, written by Dolly Parton, who's a master. If you haven't heard both of the songs side by side, I would recommend listening to them. They're both very different. And of course, Whitney Houston is one of the greatest vocalists of all time. And she took this canvas and she turned it into a soaring pop ballad when it was originally just like a very plaintive country song. Think about Heard It Through the Grapevine. You have heard that Motown hit sung in one way or another. We've have Gladys Knight and the Pips, Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin, Creedence Clearwater Revival. It was originally written by Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong for Motown Records. There is an urban legend about Motown. I have never been able to pinpoint whether this is true or not, but the urban legend is that they would test out a song, they would test it in front of an audience and see if the audience would give up their lunch money in order to buy the record. And so think about it. And again, that might just be an urban legend, but it makes sense. Like there's always that song that we get stuck in our head and you'd be like, I'd skip lunch to buy that song, you know. Unfortunately now everything through streaming, which does not really pay songwriters very well, but hopefully we can all remember a time when we would pay for music. Think about Bob Dylan, whether you like his voice or not, the man can write a song that is imminently coverable by my favorite recommendation. My favorite example is that you have Adele singing Make You Feel My Love, and she's this R&B pop mezzo-soprano superstar covering this beautiful song where if you listen to Bob Dylan, he has a very specific gravelly tenor / baritone. But he can write a song that anybody can sing. And so I really encourage you to try to write a song that is flexible, that can be sung by different people. Another great example is I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends, written by the Beatles, which they do in their very, 60s rock band style. Then you get Joe Cocker singing it in this kind of soulful rock ballad, so that's like my first spiel about try to write a song that can be performed at different angles by different artists. So then the next element of songwriting is we have melody and we have lyrics. And I think there are different people from different camps who think that melody is more important than lyrics, or lyrics are more important than melody. I think they're equally important. And there's different ways that you can practice kind of sharpening those skills. Of course, you can totally fall on one side or the other, but I think that if you think that melody is more important than lyrics, I'd like prompt you to practice with lyrics. And then if you think lyrics are more important than melody, I would prompt you to work on melody. I took a really great songwriting course once with a country writer named Bonnie Baker, who is actually a queer writer here in Nashville, who was writing country songs before it was even remotely okay to be out and gay in Nashville. And she said that, especially with co-writing, which is a very popular Nashville pastime, which you have more than, 2 or 3 songwriters coming up with one song, that it's really okay for people to take different tasks. Like one person is really focusing on the melody, another person's really focusing on the lyrics, and somebody might really be focused on the rhythm or the production and things like that. And I think that that aspect of being able to co-write with multiple people is actually very liberating if you suffer from perfectionism and you suffer from writer's block. And I'm going to have a section about writer's block later, because I've suffered from that, and learning to co-write really helped me with that. Because co-writing is an ancient and well-established musical practice that I think that we can sometimes feel pressured not to engage in. And honestly, learning to co-write when I moved to Nashville was incredibly liberating for me, because I really would get stuck and like, I can't finish this song. And then you set up a co-write with somebody and then you have to finish it within 3 hours. So that is one of those writer's block prompts. But I digress. All right. So we're going to start with hooks. I'm just starting with melodies and hooks first, not because it's more important than lyrics, but I have to start somewhere. So I think that I think a lot of people think that melodies just have to come out of nowhere, and that it's like taken from the gods, and you have to go write it down. That has not been my experience. I'm not blessed with that. I have to sit down and play around with a melody, kind of like Play-Doh or Silly Putty. And if you have an instrument of your choice, that's a great way to mess around with it. I like to write vocally a lot of the time, so I'll sit in my car or in the shower or something, and I'll just be playing around with melodies with my voice. And what you're ultimately looking for, I find, in a really catchy song is that you are looking for a hook that gets the audience listening, and then it jolts them a little bit. You don't want to jolt them too much. You don't want too much of a dissonance unless you're really doing some like intense jazz or metal. But you want something that kind of wakes them up a little bit. It's like an elevator pitch. But it's still in the same chord progression that feels familiar to them. There is a term in Nashville that we use. It's called "Don't bore us, get to the chorus." Like I said, your song is an elevator pitch. Your audience has a short attention span, so you want to get to the hook as soon as you can. And there are multiple song structures out there, so I'm not going to choose one over the other. I mean, the most common and popular is verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus. But there's so many kinds, and I'm not going to choose one for you, but I'm going to give you some examples. So think about My Girl, the song My Girl. So it's like, I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I've got the month of May. And then it's a very short verse. It goes directly into a very short pre-chorus, but it's building. I guess you'd say, what can make me feel this way, my girl? Talking about my girl, my girl. It's so short, but it gets you in. And Motown songs, early Motown, were really short. They were like 2.5 minutes sometimes. They just got in and out and they did the job. So then we have Yesterday, which everybody knows, by the Beatles. And Yesterday starts off with the hook. So it's yesterday. All my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be. There's a shadow hanging over me. Oh, yesterday came suddenly. They start off with a hook. But then what they do is that they take right you're getting into the rhythm of the song, right? And then they go, why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. I said something wrong, now I long for yesterday. It's sing-songy, but it's not a sing-songy song. You can have things. Tom Waits likes to say that he likes beautiful melodies telling you terrible things. And I think that that is a great way to look at songwriting, whether it's melody or lyrics. It's about contrast, it's about juxtaposition, it's about dynamics. And so what you see the Beatles did there is they're taking a sing-songy, almost folksy melody, and then they're making it very plaintive. They're making it pretty sad. And then they're also differentiating one hook from another hook, one melody line from another melody line. And this can be pretty hard for some people, I think, when they're first starting. You're like, which way do I go? What do I do? How do I hone it? Give yourself some patience. I like to say you put all the melody lines you can have and then what we call Frankensteining in songwriting, which is where you kind of cut off one part and you sew it onto another part, and suddenly you get a Frankenstein monster of a song, but it's actually really beautiful. And so one way that you can kind of differentiate melodies from one another and kind of give them that contrast and that lift is play with different keys. You can start low or you can start high and then jump around as much as your vocal range allows you to. I'm going to switch to Britney Spears now. I know we were just in the Beatles, but Britney worked a lot with Max Martin, who's one of the most prolific and successful songwriters of all time, who's written pretty much every pop song from the 90s until now. So if you think of Oops, I Did It Again by Britney Spears, we have I Think I Did It Again. I Made You Believe We're More Than Just Friends. It's like way down low, right? Oh, baby, it might seem like a crush, but it doesn't mean that I'm serious. 'Cause to lose all my senses, that is just so typically me. Oh, baby, baby, oops, I did it again. He's playing, it's Max Martin. He's playing down low, he goes up high. Also, it doesn't make any sense, but that's okay. Max Martin is Swedish, and he talks a lot about how English is not his first language. So when he writes in English, it allows him to kind of take leaps and have fun in ways that some of us may be more self-conscious about. And you notice this a lot with people who aren't native English speakers. When they do write in English, they have a lot more fun than we do, I think, sometimes. I like to say all of ABBA's discography is like that. Like you're like, what are they talking about? But they're having a lot of fun. So I would honestly encourage you to try to have fun with your songwriting the way that somebody who's just picking up a new language does. Um, Also, speaking of ABBA, think about Dancing Queen. So the beginning of that song is Friday night and the lights are low. Looking out for a place to go where they play the right music, getting in the swing. You come to look for a kick. Like it's way down, it's playing everywhere, and then it goes into the chorus, which is, "You are the dancing queen, young and sweet, only 17." They play down low, they play up high. Play around with your range. I'm not going to say jump an octave if you don't have an octave, multiple octave range like Mariah Carey, who's also an incredible songwriter and like co-wrote / fully wrote most of her hit songs. She's insane. Play with your range. Play with what you've got and throw it around. Um, think I Will Always Love You also does the same thing. It starts out low, it goes up high. Again, play with your range. Also, I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston. It starts out, really mellow and kind of plaintive. Clock strikes upon the hour and the sun begins to fade. Still enough time to figure out how to chase my blues away. I've done all right up till now. It's the light of day that shows me how. And when the night falls, my loneliness calls. Oh, I want to dance with somebody. I want to feel the heat with somebody. See what I'm saying? And yes, I'm going to sing everything today because it's what I love to do and I do it anyway. So, Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus also does the same thing. If we're gonna just talk about pop divas, you're gonna she starts way down da 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 da, and then she goes, I came in like a wrecking ball. See what I'm saying? I think you get the gist now. I'm not gonna say jump an octave. I'm just gonna say play with your range. Make some leaps and bounds. Another fun thing you can do is use weird sounds. Dolly Parton, when she wrote 9 to 5, if you listen to the beginning, it's like she said that she did that by playing around with her long ass acrylic nails on her desk. And she's like, that sounds like a fun thing. I think I'm going to write that down. And it turned into 9 to 5. Max Martin also talks about doing that with Blank Space that he co-wrote with Taylor Swift. Taylor is a really great songwriter. Even if you don't like her, she gets songs that get stuck in people's head, which is the goal. But there's a tongue click in Blank Space. It's like, and I'll write your name. And if you listen to the iPhone demos and like the behind the scenes of the song, Max and Taylor are talking about it, and they're like, "Oh, people are gonna hate that. Let's put it in." And they did, and it's a very catchy slash earworm. Which again, be willing to let people hate you, because the fact is, if they hate you, they're actually you're also taking up space rent free inside of their brains. And like I said earlier, Max Martin, when he first wrote "Baby One More Time," another Britney Spears hit, he said he doesn't know what "Hit Me Baby One More Time" means because it's not his first language. It just sounded good. It sounds good phonetically. It's fun to sing. Patty Griffin, who's one of my favorite songwriters, folk and Americana songwriters, also a prolific guitarist, said that she really only likes to write like finished songs that she likes to sing. So she's incredibly prolific. She's probably has a dozen albums at this point. They're all very sad. But she says that she likes to sing. She likes to write songs that she wants to sing. So it's built-in success there because people will also want to sing those songs that if you write them and you want to sing them. Another, if we're going to talk about kind of fun sounds and whatnot, I personally really love the artist Regina Spektor. People kind of are on the fence about her sometimes, but she's also, her first language is Russian, and when she learned English, she brings a lot of that like fun whimsy into writing songs. She uses a lot of different noises and kind of she's playing around with the English language and with Russian and with French because those are the languages she speaks. So really, I just encouraging you to play around with sounds, play around with range, play around with melodic shifts. And since if you're going to try to stay in the same chord progression, staying in the same chord progression helps your audience because they might not have a grasp of music theory that a more advanced songwriter will have. But if you can still play around with the movement and the dynamics of that song with sound, with rhythm. Single Ladies by Beyonce has so many fun sounds and rhythms in there. It's really sing-songy, but it's also super sexy. So it's like you have the OOOs, you know, because if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Don't be mad, want to see, cause he want it. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Oh, 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 oh. It's like, doesn't stop. It's just constantly bouncing. People love that. People love it. So that's kind of my spiel about melodies. It's really about you choose your chord progression, you choose the the key you want it to be in and all that stuff to make it accessible to your audience. You kind of want to unless you're singing to people who are already like a intense fan of yours, so they know how you're writing, and so they know what to expect from you. Then I would say throw in some kind of like really experimental stuff in there. Or if you but if you're trying to if you're trying to reach somebody who's never heard you before, it's like it's like your elevator pitch for your music. I would say stay in a chord progression that the average Joe Schmo might recognize, and then play around inside it melodically to get their attention. And you should be pretty strategic about that. If you're thinking in your song that your song does not have kind of an oomph to it, play around with some of this stuff. It's not supposed to come naturally and organically. It's meant to be experimented with. All right, that's my like super fast spiel about melodies. And now we can talk about lyrics, which is one of my favorite things. I love lyrics. I love songs that kind of are a short story in 3 minutes of that, 3 minute short story. It can be longer, it can be shorter, but I'm really trying to kind of show you how to write a song that gets, if nobody's ever heard you before and you were to be just singing on, I used to busk a lot in New York, singing on the subway. And if you were just to have like 3 minutes before when that commuter comes down the stairs and is waiting for their train, they have those 3 minutes to listen to you, like to get their attention, and then that's basically kind of what I'm trying to convey here. So with lyrics, we have some really good Nashville phrases because Nashville is really big on lyrics, or at least it used to be. Nowadays, a lot of like the quote unquote bro country is straying a lot from like the clever storytelling and some of like the pretty brutal storytelling also, that used to be a huge part of country songwriting. But I'm going to try to convey things that have been taught to me. So there is a quote by Harlan Howard, which is that a good song should be three chords in the truth. And of course, please use as many chords as you like, as long as it's melodically pleasant. But the truth part is really important. And again, I said Tom Waits likes to says, "I like beautiful melodies telling me terrible things." And again, you don't have to be, morose, but I think what he's talking about is dynamics and contrast and the juxtaposition of images and whatnot. So if you're writing, I would really recommend being brave. And that doesn't mean like making a stand or anything. Like, what's something that you're afraid to tell somebody because it's kind of messed up, like, what was your lowest point? What's your most embarrassing story? What's the most powerful feeling you've ever had? What's the most joyful experience you've ever had? It's kind of like journal. Like, get it all out. I highly recommend just journaling things, and then don't worry about the editing. We'll edit after. But really journaling things, and being really brave with the moment. I like to think Fast Car by Tracy Chapman is really important in this because it's a really sad song. It's really beautiful. But there's one lyric in there that just like kills me every time, and it's see, my old man's got a problem. He lived with a bottle, that's the way it is. He says his body's too old for working. His body's too young to look like his. My mama went off and left him. She wanted more from life than he could give. I said, somebody's got to take care of him. So I quit school, and that's what I did. So you have this, you resonate with all three of these characters. You're resonating with her alcoholic father, you're resonating with her mother who's like putting up a boundary, and you're also resonating with the narrator who quit school. And it's a really complicated life situation. Don't be afraid of complicated stories. Don't be afraid to write that in. And sure, you'll be like, well, how do I put that in a song? Well, that's where we edit, and that's where we figure things out. But I would really encourage people, don't be afraid to write the hard stuff. And if you have a hard time figuring out how to write that, there's an old writing adage, which is also a big Nashville saying, which is show me, don't tell me. So if you're having a hard time describing some big thing that's happened to you, um, throw away the adjectives and then paint a story. I like to think also when it comes to dark things that you don't really want to talk about. I think of Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison Blues. He starts off, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. Like there's no like adjectives or it's not so much flowery descriptive language. He's telling you this action that's he's showing you, and it's really dark and it leaves you asking some questions. You're like, okay, but he's developing a character right there. He's describing the fate of this murderer and why he did it, which is there's no reason why he did it, which is pretty dark. He gets to the point and suddenly you're inside the head of this character, you know. I also think of Angel from Montgomery, written by John Prine, beautifully sung by Bonnie Raitt also. And at the end of the song, they're describing this very depressing situation, but instead of being like, I'm a loser, blah, 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 the lines are, there's flies in the kitchen, I can hear them, they're buzzing, and I ain't got nothing since I woke up today. How the hell can a person go to work in the morning and come home in the evening and have nothing to say? Like suddenly you're jolted into this kitchen where it's like they're not saying I'm depressed. They're saying that there's flies in the kitchen. I can hear them buzzing and they haven't done anything since they woke up today. Like that is classic show me, don't tell me. You can paint a story with don't be afraid to paint a story in the few lines that you have, and you really can. And take some time. I always say journal, 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 and then whittle it down, and then use verbs. Verbs are your big friend here. I think being subtle and understated about really important things is a great tool. I like to think of God Only Knows by the Beach Boys. It's I may not always love you, but as long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. It starts off the being like, I might not always love you, but actually this is really important and I am gonna be in love with you for a long time. The world could though if you should ever leave me, the world would still go on, believe me, but the world could show nothing to me, so what good would living do me? Like it's very clever. But it's about a big thing, and it's also kind of a plaintive song, right? If you can tell, I like sad songs. There's also a lot of clever songs out there. I think being clever is one of those things that if you have that skill, I'm not a particularly funny person, but if you're funny, I highly recommend throwing that into your songs because people love funny songs. I always think of Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks, Blame It All on My Roots, I Showed Up in Boots and Ruined Your Black Tie Affair. What a visual, right? Like, and then of course he goes, I've got friends in low places. Great song. It's already done everything we've talked about. It's painted a vision. It's hilarious. And then it's playing with high notes, low notes, and everything in between. But if we're going to go back to my sad death songs, which I love, if we look at Traveling Soldier by the Chicks, formerly the Dixie Chicks, currently the Chicks, at the end of the song, it's a song about a woman who falls in love with a soldier who's been drafted and goes to Vietnam. And by the end of the song, you're realizing that he's passed. And the last part of the song is one Friday night at a football game, the Lord's Prayer said and the anthem sang. A man said, folks, would you bow your head for the list of local Vietnam dead? And crying all alone under the stands was the piccolo player and the marching band. And one name read and nobody really cared, but a pretty little girl with a bow in her hair. And it's like throwing the piccolo player in it just makes it even sadder because there's an element of loneliness and strangeness. And I think the element of kind of strangeness always helps in painting these scenes. Like you're really trying to describe the scene, and there's a beauty in small subtleties, another song I really like is Casimir Pulaski Day by Sufjan Stevens, and it's full of these like strange, tiny, weird moments that really express. It's also about a lover who dies as a teenager. I'm really sorry, but I love sad songs. he at the end, he's like, on the floor at the Great Divide with my shirt tucked in and my shoes untied. I am crying in the bathroom. And then in the morning, when you finally go, the nurse runs in with her head hung low and the cardinal hits the window. It's like these tiny little moments. It also, if you're trying to not be that dark, you think about something like that by Tim McGraw, and he says, I got a barbecue stain on my white t-shirt and she was killing me in that mini skirt. So like that's really fun stuff, right? The song Great Day to Be Alive by Travis Tritt is like, I got rice cooking in the microwave. I got a 3-day beard I don't plan to shave. And it's a funny thing, but I just gotta say, I'm doing all right. He's just explaining his day, in detail. So if I haven't explained it enough at this point, I really like details that are describing a scene, setting the scene, the mise en scène, and I think that those are the little things that really sink people into a song. All right, so that's kind of my rant about lyrics. Another thing that people love to do in Nashville, and I think is a pretty fun tool. Nashville songwriting is full of tools. So it's not so much rules as it is there's tools that you can deploy. And one of them is setting up a song in like 3 tiers of you start at one vignette of that person's life, another vignette of that person's life, and then the third part is the third vignette of that person's life. And it's just kind of like these little glimpses into a life. And I think that when if you want to say you have 3 verses or whatnot, that's a lot of time to be able to develop a character. So really play around with that, like play around with creating these characters. And even if I call it like the method acting version of writing a song, it's like you might be creating a song about a fictional character, but you're filling it with your own experiences. It's like method acting, right? You're bringing your own life experience to this character. It doesn't have to necessarily be autobiographical. You can just be creating a character based on your lived life. And I think that element of being able to create a fake character can really free people up if they're feeling stuck, if you're feeling shy about writing some of your more intense life experiences, and you're like, I don't know if I want people to know that that's about me. You can just create a character, create a fake fictional character, and then imbue them with your life experience. So that's like a really fun tip for if you're feeling stuck. And that's going to be my third part of this, is when you're feeling stuck. I've been writing songs for a long time, since I was a kid. And when I was a kid, it was really fun and easy because you don't have you're just going for it. You're learning everything, everything's new. And then when I first started writing songs for like college bands that I was in, and then when I moved to New York, I was in some other fun little bands. But then once people started to be like, "Oh, we like your songs and whatnot," I had a really long period of having really intense like perfectionist paralysis and writer's block. There went a few years where I felt like I couldn't write a song. And it wasn't until I started to kind of incorporate some of these next things into my routine that I started to become unstuck. And so I would really encourage all of you to just, if you feel stuck in any way, and maybe in other forms of art too, if you're just a creative writer or writing about nonfiction writer or whatever, and you're feeling stuck, play around with some songwriting. There's like low stakes. And that would be my first thing, is like play around with other art forms that are much lower stakes, that people aren't all focused on you. Play around with it. I am a big fan of using weird words or using prompts. The songwriter Sia, you'll notice she writes vocally, first of all. She's very eccentric. And she's had a long career. Before she did her whole thing of like hiding her face with her wigs and stuff, she was a pretty prolific kind of singer-songwriter. And she battled a lot of addiction and whatnot. And ultimately at the end kind of she's still alive, but she decided she's going to hide her face and all this stuff. But she does a lot of stuff where she's like, I'll just choose a random word and write a song about it, like titanium, which she wrote with David Guetta. And it's just like a random word that she liked the sound of, and then she turned it into a pop song. And she even said something about how she wrote a song about a toaster because she just likes the idea of writing a song about a toaster. So I have found that when I do that, it really takes me out of my like weird perfectionistic, oh, I have to write such a serious song. Um, uh, it's what we like to call writing a dummy song or writing dummy lyrics. Um, the song Thrift Shop or Thrift Store, Thrift Shop, I think, which was a huge hit, that started out as a joke song. Write a joke song. Writing joke songs help bust me out of my writer's block. And writing a joke song or writing dummy lyrics can bring you into surprising places. Going back to Yesterday by the Beatles, the urban legend is that the first lyrics were actually scrambled eggs. And again, whether or not that's true or not, it's such a great urban legend and it's so real. When like I always tell people, write a dumb song, write an ugly song, write a bad song, have fun with it. It will snap you out of your writer's block. And again, another thing with writer's block is just you don't have to write a good song to still be writing songs. Like people like Bob Dylan and Patty Griffin are so damn prolific. They really don't care if it's a good song or not. They just get it out. Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer Elizabeth Gilbert, says done is better than good, which sounds very shocking to the perfectionists out there. And she's a writer, a writer. But when I first heard done is better than good, like I kind of clutched my pearls a little bit. I was like, absolutely not. But now I understand the wisdom of that. It gets you out of your head. So just finish it. Just finish it. And maybe find a co-writer. That's a big thing. The thing that helped me getting out of writer's block was finding a co-writer. Because people have visions that you don't have. You know what I mean? So try co-writing. Try co-writing. Try dummy lyrics. Try dummy words. Play with rhythms. Play with your voice. Play with instruments that you don't know how to play. Going back to Max Martin. If you can't tell, I really love Max Martin, who also wrote "I Want It That Way" by the Backstreet Boys. He said that he wrote that because he's a terrible guitar player and he picked up a guitar and just started messing around with it. And he wrote this incredible hit song that is, anybody who's a millennial has that song seared in their brain. And it's just because Max Martin doesn't know how to play guitar and decided to play with one. So let's see, do I have more? Those are some of the things that have helped me with my writer's block. And again, like I said, get rid of this idea that only good singers should sing or good guitar players should play guitar, or get rid of the good idea. That really made me stuck for a very long time. Just do it. Just play, just practice, just have fun, mess around. And remember, get rid of this idea that like you're going to have a fully formulated song that comes into your head. A lot of songs have hooks that stick around for a while and that you Frankenstein in them and stick them together, a thing that helps me a lot is I try to just write down like one-liners, weird phrases that might be a fun idea for a song, or might be a fun lyric for a song, or might inform the rhythm of a melody or something, kind of one-liners, things like that. And yeah, that's kind of, and remember that you have some tools. We have tools now that people didn't have before. Your iPhone voice memo, like a voice memo, is a huge help. I have so many songs that started on voice memos. And I've been working on a musical in Chicago recently, and I've never written a musical before, so I was very kind of what's the word, intimidated at first, a lot of imposter syndrome, but it was really fun once I started to get into the hang of it, because you'd be thrown prompts. They'd be like, I need a song for this scene, and you just don't have a choice. You just have to write a song for that scene. And they'll they'll be like, these are the lyrics and this is the scene and we need you to create it. And so it really threw me out of my comfort zone, which I have found is really good. If you're for creatives, being thrown out of your comfort zone is really healthy for us. And I think that whether or not the music I'm writing for the show is good or not, who knows? But as a creative, I've felt very creatively fulfilled by being given prompts and random words and random scenes, and they'll be like, we need a rumba, and I'm like, I don't even know what a rumba is, but I looked it up, listened to the rhythm of it, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try my best at writing a rumba, or a swing song. And I'm like, I've never written a swing song, but I found it was so fun. Like, I was having fun writing these songs. So I would also recommend doing that. Throw yourself weird prompts, give yourself weird prompts. It's kind of like when you take creative writing classes and they're like, I'm giving you the word, gravel, like do something about gravel or something about peaches or something, force yourself to be creative with weird notions and weird words and whatnot. And then last but not least, of like kind of the urban legends that I love, again, I don't know if it's real or not. It's yet again the Beatles, because it's the Beatles. This idea of the kitchen table test, that without all the production, without all of the hubbub of having, their, incredible, musicianship and whatnot, could you enjoy the song if you just sang it at the kitchen table with like a guitar and some voices, or, a untuned piano in the corner? I think that's always really a great way to look at a song, and for me, a lot of that is also like, could if you sang it by yourself, like, with a guitar or something, and granted, everybody's actually listening and it's not just like, a loud pub where nobody can hear you. If they're actually paying attention, like, are you getting your point across? Are you getting the words across? Is it something that you enjoy singing, that they could enjoy singing? Oh, don't be afraid of a sing-along. Love a sing-along. People love a sing-along, like, ooh, la la la's and whatnot, like the end of Hey Jude. Those are fun. People want to sing. People want to go back to our, how our ancestors were, where we're all singing together, you know. And that's something that people miss. And I think that there's so much now about, you have to have a good voice to sing. I really don't want people, I want people to unsubscribe from that. I think that everybody deserves to play music and sing and listen to music and sing along. And that's why people love concerts, because we can all sing really loudly at the top of our lungs and we're all singing together, and nobody knows if you're a good singer or a bad singer. You're just, music is our birthright. Art is our birthright. Creativity is our birthright. And I think we should all engage in it. And so, yeah, I know that I've given kind of a very, very broad spiel about songwriting. It's obviously something I can talk about for a very long time. But I do want to open up the discussion and see if anybody has any questions or anything like that. So,
Well, Dina says you are incredibly knowledgeable and clearly have worked very hard to get to the point of knowledge and expertise you have. Actually, it's Kyle saying this. It's incredibly impressive.
oh, well, thank you so much.
I agree with as a fan of your work. And I could listen to you talk songwriting all day. So first of all, can you talk a bit about editing songs? Like, you've got a basic song down. What does editing look like from song to song?
For me, editing is, don't be afraid to, I would say, don't be what a word, like, don't be precious about it. Be, don't be attached to every part of the song. Be open to trying new things, because there have been times when I get really, when I'm co-writing a song and people are like, well, let's change this, and I get really uptight about it. I'm like, I do not want you to change that. But then we try it, we take a look at it, and it's actually way better. So think about it when you're editing. If it helps your perfectionism like me, just think, be like, this is another draft. I'm working on another draft. I'm looking at it from a different angle. I was working with a a guy who's mixing one of my songs once, and he's really good. He's old school Nashville guy, and he's like, I like to mix the levels way out in weird ways. Like, how would you mix it if it was a metal song or like a ballad or like a waltz or like, all these things, just to listen to it, just to hear the contrasts. When he said that, I was like, oh, it gets me out of my like comfort zone. And so I always think with editing, it's try it, even if it makes you uncomfortable, especially if it makes you uncomfortable. And then also don't be afraid to sit on it. Like let it marinate, go a day or two, come back to it. And if you have a deadline, finish it. But if you don't have a deadline, let it marinate and let it breathe and get a couple nights sleep or whatever, and then come back, try different words, try different melodies. Like I'm a really big believer in experimenting, but document it. Document every step of the way, because you're not going to remember it all unless you have a photographic memory. But yeah, definitely document it, because sometimes I'll go be like, I want version 1.5 of that song, and like the third edit, was the best one. So document.
What are some resources you can point people to as they're working on songwriting, whether it's books? I mean, there are great YouTube channels that break down songs. What are places you would go to?
I always say find your favorite songs and look up the songwriters. And then look at those songwriters and see what else they've written. So Wikipedia is your friend, because a lot of times, you'll have, so especially in pop and country and anything from the 50s and 60s, you'll have the like 50s, 60s were like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the golden age of songwriting. You'll have writers like Carole King, who wrote a ton of songs for other people. And then finally she's like, I'm going to make my own album. And then you get Tapestry and you're like, oh, mind blown. Bob Dylan wrote a lot of songs for other people, like tons. The Motown was like a song, it Hitsville, USA. They're just like churning these things out for other people. So if you really want to look up songwriters, like learn songwriting, look up your favorite songwriters. Like, so find your song that you love and then see what songwriters worked on it. And a lot of times an artist will work with the same songwriters a lot. So that's a big thing that I did. And I started to create like a stable of my favorite songwriters who I've talked about here, obviously, like anything from the Motown era or Motown. I love anything from Max Martin. I love Patty Griffin. I love, so research the songwriters, because sometimes, and you'll get things like hit songs will have multiple writers on it. Like Beyonce co-writes a lot of stuff with her stable of writers. She's worked with Sia. Sia is one of my favorite songwriters. So look, Wikipedia is your friend. People's discographies are your friend. Yeah. And a lot of those songwriters will give you talks about their processes also. And some songwriters are more production level. Some of them are more lyrics level, and some of them are more melody level. So I just am a big fan of like going it down wormholes of your favorite songwriter.
All great insights, Mercy, and really thank you so much for doing this workshop today.
Absolutely. I'm glad you guys asked me to. It was really fun.
Thanks for joining us for the Co-Creative Sessions, funded in part by the Acushnet, Dartmouth, and New Bedford Local Cultural Councils, local agencies which were supported by the Mass Cultural Council, a state agency, and funded in part by 2 programs administered by the New Bedford Economic Development Council, Federal Award Number SLFRP 1067, awarded to the City of New Bedford by the U.S. Department of the Treasury, and by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, via the Community Navigator Program to support COVID-19 small business recovery. Stay tuned for upcoming sessions and view previous sessions in the series by visiting the Co-Creative Center's events page at cocreativenb.org. We look forward to seeing you at the next Co-Creative Session.